Good day. My name is Michael Schmeeckle. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today on Everyone's Got a Story. What's yours? The premise behind this show is that we've all gone through life. Life has happened to us. As we've gone through life, we've gained experience and knowledge. As our guests come on today and as into the future, they will retell their experiences and knowledge that some of you may resonate with to give you hope and to inspire you to be more. Today we have Kristine Bockerman, and I want to thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, it's definitely an honor and a pleasure to have you here today also.
Great.
So would you like to kind of tell us and the audience about what experiences you've gone through and why they're important to you, please?
Okay. All right. I'll just go ahead and start kind of from the beginning.
Okay.
I was born in, you call it South Omaha, but a lot of people call it South Omaha if you were born there. I was born there, and I grew up in a conservative, basically a religious family. And then after I got a little bit older, I started having some issues with weight. And my father was thin, and he was very, how would you say, kind of legalistic. And so he put me on a diet. And if I didn't lose 2 pounds during that week, for that weekend, then I was grounded.
Oh, my.
And yeah, so that kind of caused a problem with food with me,
Yes.
that control issues.
Yes.
So I found, how would I say, speed, drugs, I found those kind of things. And my dad was very proud of me. He didn't know that I was using drugs, but I started losing weight. And so then that got me started into the drugs. And I started taking drugs. I started hanging out with the wrong people. I started, I'd gone to parochial schools. I had, gone through everything. I knew what was right and I knew what was wrong. And I really didn't have a relationship with God. I knew who he was. That's basically all I did. Yeah. And so I thought, 3 strikes and I'm out. So I might as well have fun, and might as well have fun as a teenager and do everything possible. So I did. And I was with, how do I say, it was with many men. I did things that I really regretted. I also got pregnant in high school. And I ended up having an abortion too. Not the first one, but the second one. And my parents helped me take care of my son. And so I was afraid that they wouldn't help me anymore if they found out I was pregnant again. Yeah. So I ended up having an abortion, and I became a pregnancy counselor later on. And I found out that one of the things that we learned was after you have an abortion, that 10 years after you have an abortion, you usually start going to depression, because you know that there was a baby, and you know that you didn't have a funeral for that baby, you never got to grieve that baby. Yeah. And then you end up about 10 years later starting to think, well, they would be 10 years old, then they'd go to, they'd graduate, all those things. Mm-hmm. And you start a lot of women go into depression about 10 years after they have an abortion. So that was one of the things that I learned. And so I went into some deep depressions. Mm. And also after, I found my husband and I met. We met at a singles group. But I was still using. I was drinking, I was smoking pot all day, every day. That's just what I did. And I just felt so guilty about all the things I had done growing up. I just didn't think that there was any kind of forgiveness for me. I thought, like I said, 3 strikes and I'm out. So we had our child. I did stop drinking and smoking pot during that time, but after I had the child, after I had my daughter, then I continued to do that. I did that for until I was about 30 years old. And we had gotten married when I was 22. And so when I was about 30 years old, I ended up with cervical cancer. Right. And so I was thinking, man, if I die, I've been so selfish and self-centered. Who have I helped? I really haven't helped anybody. And who would come to my funeral? And I thought, nobody. So after that, I thought, I need to do something about my drinking, about all these kind of, so I actually found a recovery program. I went through it for about 10 years. But I manipulated and controlled the whole time I went through. I found different people to mentor me. I found different groups, so nobody really ever knew me. And so I thought, well, after that 10 years, I thought, you know what, I didn't drink, so I bet I could drink and I could control my drinking now. Well, that didn't work very well.
Oops.
So, no, it didn't. So about 4 or 5 years, I drank. I drank at home mostly,
Yes.
but I drank, and I started drinking pretty heavy too. So then after that, then my daughter started getting into trouble, into pretty big trouble.
Oh.
And so I thought, oh man, I need to do something. And then she had my granddaughter, and I was really concerned. I thought, I want to be a good grandma. I want to do something. I don't want to be this drunk grandma that is around my granddaughter. So I got sober, and this time I got a sponsor. She was from the Northeast, and she had been in the military, so she was hard.
Oh my.
And I didn't hide from her.
Oh my.
And so she had me get a job. She had me, at the beginning of the meetings, putting chairs up and taking them down, be on committees. And then she helped me it helped me to learn to start. I really found out who I was and what I wanted to do. And I had lost about 100 pounds. And so I became a diet wellness coach. And I started going to networking, and that's kind of how I met you, Michael.
Which is pretty awesome.
Yes.
I think it was the Omaha Empowerment Breakfast.
Yes. When I used to wear my white coat and so I was a diet wellness coach, and that was great. And then then they started doing the diet where you eat I don't even remember what that diet was called anymore, but everybody started doing that. So my business started drying up. Mm-hmm. So then I was working with BC Clark,
yes,
and with
she's awesome.
She is, with Metro Omaha Business Women's Forum, and I was her executive assistant.
Awesome.
And so I was asked to find women that were well known and done something really well in Omaha. So the first year I'd found a heart surgeon, like the best heart surgeon in Omaha.
Cool.
Second time I found the mayor, which she was the only woman city council person at that time.
Very cool.
And so she joined our group. She liked it so much. And then she said, I was going to be on this committee, but now I got to make an announcement. So she started making an announcement about running for mayor.
That's cool.
So I had always been interested in politics. My dad was very interested in politics, so was I. And I listened to talk radio and all that, and I listened to it for years. And so I decided that, and I really knew that God was calling me to help to be part of government and do something, make a difference. Cool. So I started helping her. I started volunteering for her. I started following her, and then eventually I just helped her all the time. I became her volunteer coordinator.
That's cool.
And then I became her office manager. And then when she won, she asked me to come over and be her receptionist.
Awesome.
And one really cool thing was I didn't have a college degree. And that was pretty unusual.
That is cool, though.
Yeah. And so she took me over there. And then about a year and a half after, when I was working for the mayor, I met the chaplains for Douglas County Corrections. Cool. And I knew the Lord was calling me to that. And I'm like, oh man, I thought I was supposed to stay with the mayor. I thought maybe I'd be mayor one day. I mean, all those things that you think, because people would ask me, are you going to become the mayor? I don't know why, but they would ask me that. And I'd like, well, is it that what I'm supposed to do, Lord? But then the chaplains came. And so I had when you work for the city, you have good, you have good, what do you call it, like dental and physical.
Benefits.
Yeah, you have all those benefits. You have good benefits, good parking, College World Series tickets, all those things.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have good pay, too. And so we had a second income.
Yes.
And so I knew the Lord was saying, and that what I would be going doing with the chaplains was to volunteer. So I left that job. And the Lord actually provided a bigger house after I did that. Awesome. We had the money. It was like, because I was being obedient and I was doing what he was asking me to do.
Yes.
And so, so I left about exactly 2 years because I really prayed about it and said, is this really what I'm supposed to do? And I knew it was. And so then I started, and I grew up, like I said, in a conservative family. And one of the things was, if you're in prison or you're in jail, we believed that you should stay in jail not get, you just stay in your room or you go do hard labor, no TV, no nothing. I mean, that's what I believed. And so when I got to meet the women, it was funny. I went, oh my gosh, these women, they're in because of trauma. And some of them were that maybe their significant other beat them up for their whole life. And one time they decided to come back and fight back, and then their significant other would call the police, and then they'd end up in jail for domestic violence. Right. I heard that story more than once happening. So, and I just would see the trauma of the women, and we started teaching a trauma class, and I got certified in doing that, and we started teaching a trauma class in jail, and I knew that women had trauma, and that that was what was causing a lot of the problem, was because they didn't know how to deal with their trauma, or their father maybe turned them on to drugs, and their father loved them, but he turned them on to drugs, and so then they would be really confused, because if my father loved me, and drugs are, it's very confusing. The same thing when my grandfather was my favorite grandpa, and I was 5 years old. I'd sit on his lap, and my dad would get so mad, because his father was an alcoholic. And my dad would get so mad because my grandpa had a shot of whiskey, and he'd leave a little bit of whiskey in the bottom of the shot glass, and he'd give it to me. And my dad would be so mad. And, I think that I really confused that with love. Yep. I really did. Yep. So anyway, I started helping the mayor doing that, started helping with the chaplains, and then I started going out to York Women's Prison. Yep. And I started visiting there once a week. So, and they were actually at Douglas County. They were grooming me to be the chaplain at Douglas County. Gotcha. And I'd gone to school for a couple years, but then the Lord said, nope, I want you to do something different. So it was like, okay, I felt stupid, but I knew that this was what I was supposed to do. So I started going out to York Prison, driving out there once a week, going out there and visiting the women out there. And it was, it was really rewarding. Well, then I was going to become a liaison between Douglas County and York. So when the women went out there, I could help them. Cool. Well, then COVID hit. Cool. Then COVID hit. Oh, no. So that changed everything. But, it actually worked to my advantage, because I ended up, I knew the Lord was saying, I want you to start a sober living house. And eventually it would be a 90-day house, and then a 3-quarter house, and then an apartment with a one-stop shop. So it's called Reformation at the Crossroads. And when you think of Reformation, you think reformation, so a reforming of the women. And prison reform that's just like one of my big topics that I'm very passionate about. It's good. And Crossroads, I saw the Crossroads before it got torn down. Yes. And when before it got torn down, I thought this would be a perfect location for, a one-stop shop. But I had to start out smaller than that. But Crossroads is where the women are really in their lives. Yes. It's like, am I going to get help, or am I going to keep going down the road that I was going down? So Reformation at the Crossroads, that's what that stands for.
I like that.
So thank you. And then so I started doing that. So we have in our program, and then the one good thing about COVID too is all the women that were going into jail and teaching, well, they couldn't go in either. So they all started becoming facilitators, and we have facilitators, and we have a therapist, and we have a registered nurse, we have a case manager. Very cool. And then a couple of the women can walk the women through that are facilitators. And board members can walk the women through, like, to get their children back from the judicial system. Good. And also to get walk them through the judicial system too. So, but we have a sober living house, and it's downtown. And I usually try not to give out the address, but we are having a fundraiser. Okay. February. I keep saying February. It's past February. It's warm. June 24th, 11 to 2 on the corner of 41st and Cummings. Okay. And we'll have a food truck, Z-Mogs. And Z-Mogs, I've heard, is really good. And
very delicious.
That's what I heard. Yes. And so people said, I thought they closed. And I guess they did close their brick and mortar, but they have a food truck.
Food truck, yes.
And I've never eaten from a food truck. Isn't that funny? So this will be my first time eating at a food truck. So I've had people grab stuff from me from a food truck, but I've never, when we worked in the mayor's office, people got got things like that for us.
Yeah,
But I
Zeemogs
never
is-
went directly to the food truck. So
The Zeemogs is delicious food. I've had them off and on over the years. So
oh,
yes.
good. Well, they're very nice. The Gomez's are
Yes.
very, very nice people too.
Yes.
So I'm really happy. And 25% of the proceeds of the food will go to Reformation at the Crossroads.
Very cool. Very cool.
So, but that's kind of my life in a nutshell, and all the things that I went through. And I am so grateful that I went through all the things that I did, because I go into Potawatomi jail still, and I go in there and visit the women a couple Sundays a month. And when I would go into Douglas County, they would say to me, "Oh, church lady," and I'd go, "I don't think so." And I'd tell them my story somewhat, and they go, "Oh, I guess you're not." And they would understand that I understand. And
Yes.
now I'm 19 years sober.
Awesome.
This time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. This time I'm 19 years sober.
Cool.
And I can tell the women that, and they go, "Oh, you do understand."
Yes.
And so, just like the model in AA, how one alcoholic can talk to another alcoholic,
Yep.
because they understand. And that's the same way. And then the women that we have as facilitators, they're not always alcoholics, but they help, they teach in forgiveness and bitterness, because a lot of the women that come out of jail and prison, and one of the things that I guess our tagline is, we help addicted and wounded women avoid prison while enjoying Christ's healing.
There.
That's our tagline.
That's cool.
So we help, and a lot of the women that have been in prison or are on their way to prison are very bitter and unforgiving. We have another program called, it's called Genesis. And Genesis is a outcome-based program, and it's written by a Christian psychiatrist, and I know his last name is Dye. I'm pretty sure it's Dye. And so he deals with science, the limbic system,
Okay.
plus with biblically based principles. And that's what we're based on, biblically based principles.
And Genesis is all about new beginnings. So it has a good flow to have everything be quite powerful and positive, in helping individuals to grow and change and transform their lives into so many amazing ways.
It is, and we do have soul, that's true. We have soul care, and soul care deals with the trauma. And then we also have a woman that helps with the goals.
Very cool.
And we have, like I said, we have licensed therapists too that helps them walk through what they need to.
Very
and she's a
cool.
traveling therapist, which is nice. She goes
That is
to their
nice.
home and is able to help them that way. So right now we have a day program. We're looking for a house manager. We don't have house manager right now, which we really need. But
Hopefully soon.
hopefully soon. That's why we don't have any residents right now. But
Yes.
we do have a day program going.
Very
and
nice.
It's Monday through Friday, 9 to 3.
Very cool.
And it's free too. It's not free to us, but it is free to the women to come.
Yes.
Because we want women to be able to affect their society
Yes.
and to affect the women they're around in their family. And if they can do that, if we can help them do that, it's amazing what one person can do. One person can really affect 1,000 people.
It's like, for example, as a kid, we used to throw rocks in the water, correct? So as that rock hits the water, ripples flow out. Hits the shores, ripples back.
Yep.
And the foundational footsteps moving forward in one's life, those who are friends, families, your neighbors, your communities, and so forth, the ripples go out. As each one goes through, they look up and see an individual that has gone through life. And they now are turning their lives around to be that inspiration and hope for others who are watching on the outside. As the ripples continue through, they can be that foundational footsteps forward in so many others' lives.
And you're so right. And I have people that say, there's been a lot of things that have not gone the way that I thought they would go, and a lot of obstacles that I've gone through. But I have the women that still, and it makes me cry, because they say, you have faith, and we watch you walk through, and no matter what hits you, you just keep going. You know, you just keep ticking and just keep going. And it's just, I know that this is his ministry. It's God's ministry.
Yes.
It's not my ministry. And if he doesn't want it anymore, it's not going to be. But if he does, he's going to knock the obstacles out of the way.
Yes.
He's going to use me to knock the obstacles out of the way,
Yes.
and he's going to use other people. And and during COVID, when a lot of churches were saying they weren't getting donations and things like that, we kept getting donations. And
good, though.
yeah, it was
Very good.
really good. It was like
Blessings.
it was very, yeah, and it was because we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we're
Correct.
helping other women. And you know, it might sound arrogant, but I know we're unselfishly helping other women, and we're
Yes.
giving, and that's the best. That's how.
Yes.
That's what I feel the best
Yes.
is when I'm giving, and that's what I'd say. I tell people, you know, don't isolate. Don't
Correct.
just, you know, be there for yourself. I did that, and it didn't work out very well, and I ruined a lot of people, a lot of relationships, but to be out there and to help people, I feel the best. And
It's a good way to be inspired and motivated through this, which is part of the giving in gratitude. Is gives that wholesome of the heart.
and sometimes I don't feel like it. Sometimes I like, oh, I don't want to do that today. But you know, when I go do it, I'm like, wow, I felt really good. And what I would have missed if I didn't step up to the plate, and even if I didn't feel like it, and I was tired and thought, I still did it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
and I
true.
know I'm putting others before me, which is a good thing. And there's times where I have to put myself first, and I have to say I need to rest. There are times when I have to do that.
Yes.
Because you can be unbalanced that way too.
That is true. It's like self-love is not selfish.
Yes.
Because if you give too much, there's nothing else to give to anybody else. To give yourself that opportunity to reset, recalibrate yourself, again, you'll be able to continue moving forward, to continue helping others.
Yes.
It's part of the give and receive and give. Infinity loop of love, light, and healing. So as you move forward in life, it is that part of that transformation, the transitioning through one's life.
Yep. It is, and you can't give anybody anything from an empty cup.
Unless you want to give the cup itself.
Yeah, that's about it. And then you're gone, right?
Exactly. So we're getting ready to wrap up here in a few moments. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Wow, I've said a lot.
You said a lot of amazing story of your experience of life. You've got so much more coming up. You've got amazing, it's hard to, you've given so much to us today, but there is so much more that you're moving forward with in life.
There is.
And I would like to have you come back on the show later down the road and kind of seeing where things are at in your life and your business of Reformations of the Cross. Is that correct?
Crossroads.
That's close.
Yes. And can I put this up too?
Yes, you may.
So this is our fundraiser, Reformation at the Crossroads. It's called a block bash because it's on the block.
Makes
so
sense.
It's on our block.
Makes sense.
And like I said, ZMOGs and 11 to 2 Saturday, the June 24th, raffle, food, and fun. And we're going to have face painting too.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
So yeah, I think it'll be fun for the kids. I love to have my face painted too.
Yes, it's good to bring that inner child out at play.
It is.
So is there anything you want to, words of wisdom you'd like to tell our viewers about what's going on?
Yeah, one thing that I just would say is, you know, when I went back out again, I was so embarrassed. And I hid away. And some people are so embarrassed and they isolate. And then they never tell anybody, and they think, well, if I just stay away from the people that were with me to begin with, then I might, you know, I'll be okay. But you know, those thoughts come in your head. You start heading down the road, well, I can drink. And I did the same thing. So isolating and feeling embarrassed, there's, you know, I'm so grateful that I had that experience.
Yes.
Not grateful I went through it, but I'm grateful that I had it.
True.
Because then I can share it.
Correct.
And say, I messed up, and now look, I'm sober for 19 years.
Which is
again.
yes.
Yeah, which they're like, wow. And I'm like, yeah. And so, you know, it's just, it's good. Just don't quit just because you're embarrassed and hide and isolate. That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, solitude is not a good place to be in. Solitude work within the soul of the being of who
Yes,
you are.
I love that.
That's one of the phrases I've used for years.
I love that.
So it helps each of us move forward in our lives when you're a matter and being part of the peace and love that makes things so more important in your life.
Yes, so much. It's just, yeah, it is so good. I mean, God is so good, and you know, God made himself, well, not made himself, but God is a relationship, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yes.
So he wants us to be in relationship. He doesn't want us to stay at home and just isolate.
Correct.
And it's very easy to do because I am more of an introvert in some ways, and I get refreshing from reading a book, and I can take a book and read it all day and stay in bed and not come out. So I have to push myself out a lot of times and make myself do things.
It's nice to be like an ambivert, be a little bit of introvert yet extrovert in a balanced way of life.
Yes, it is.
So let's, well, thank you, Kristine, for being part of today's show. And thank you for each and every one of you being out there on Everyone's Got a Story. What's yours? My name is Michael Schmeeckle, and thank you once again.